And welcome back to an episode of the Clue Your Jets podcast. We're hosts Ben Blessington and Michael Nania. Michael, 9 days until the NFL draft. We're almost there. How you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I know a lot of people don't necessarily like this part of the draft season where, most of the key events have already happened, the pro days, the combine. We're kind of just dragging it out, coming up with all the debates that we could possibly come up with. I kind of enjoy this time though, putting finishing touches on your analysis of the prospects, getting ready for the draft. It builds anticipation and kind of adds to the magnitude of the draft itself. So I'm looking forward to the draft, but I'm also enjoying this time to kind of put final finishing touches on our preparations.
Yeah, and you've done a lot of cool articles on Jets X Factor this last week, trying to decide who are the Douglas guys. And I guess before we get into today's podcast, I guess just give our listeners a brief summary on kind of what you found and what Jets fans can maybe be expecting from Douglas next week.
Yeah, well, I was doing a lot of research on their trends over the past two drafts, and obviously things can change year to year. They did change from just between 2020 and 2021, but there are a few themes that Douglas has stuck to over his first two drafts. And one thing that I found is that he really has preferred for all of his prospects to be one of two things: either an above average athlete based on their relative athletic score, their RAS, or a team captain. One of those two things, every pick has matched except for Ashton Davis or Jamie Sherwood. And Davis just didn't do enough testing in 2020 to
Yeah,
qualify for an
he
RAS,
would
but
have been.
he would have met it easily. But other than that, just Sherwood. So if you're not a team captain or an above average athlete based on RAS, which is 7.5, is the about league average for a draft pick. It's been very rare to see him pick those guys. Sherwood's been the only one who hasn't checked one of those boxes.
And does Sherwoods get
Yeah,
skewed because he was technically a safety in college? And like if he was testing with the linebackers, do you think his relative athletic score would be higher? Is that how it works? Or
it would be a little bit higher. You can actually change and see what their numbers would rank at each position, but it accounts for your weight. So, like, he's a big safety
right?
because of his weight. So it does account for that, but the numbers still weren't quite there. So, other than that, though, he has preferred early in the draft to take great athletes, usually 8+ RAS. Actually, he's taken more 9+ RAS players than any other team in the league, with 7 of those. So he's favored elite athleticism early, then later in the draft, he's been more open to guys who aren't as great athletes, but those guys have typically been team captains when they haven't been great athletes. So a good blend of top end athleticism and the leadership that you get in a team captain.
Well, before we get into today's topics, I guess who are some of those guys that maybe stood out to you? I mean, obviously you can go find the articles on jetsxfactor.com, but maybe a few guys that really stuck out to you as potential people to keep an eye out for next week.
Yeah, well, looking at guys who check both boxes, there are some interesting options. A few in the first round, but once you get into more so the later rounds, you can kind of identify some potential guys they key in on. But in the first round, well, here are the first round prospects who meet both those criteria. They're a team captain and a 9+ RAS. Aiden Hutchinson, Kyle Hamilton, Jordan Davis, Devin Lloyd, and Zion Johnson are the 5 probably first round guys who meet those criteria. So it is pretty rare to hit both of those. But Hamilton and Davis, I think, are interesting to kind of increase their possibility of being, and Devin Lloyd as well. Hutchinson, I think we all know would obviously be great if he did fall to the Jets, but there's a reason he probably won't. Um, but I think it is more interesting to kind of look at I think the stronger trend comes from the guys who they won't draft. What I mentioned before, needing to hit one of those two boxes. And I was able to look at some of the guys who didn't hit who failed to hit both of those boxes. So kind of putting them in that range where they'd be an outlier pick for the Jets. And there are a few interesting guys there, more so later in the draft, but Traylon Burks, Jahan Dotson, Roger McCreary. But it doesn't really rule out anybody at the top of the draft because there are most of the top prospects are good athletes or team captains or both. So, but you can start to rule some guys out later in the draft. But it will be interesting to see how much he sticks to these trends here in his third draft.
Yeah, all fascinating stuff. And again, you can go to Jets X Factor to find some
Yes.
more in-depth details on that. So today, Michael, I mean, we've been talking about these draft prospects the last few months here. I think everybody's sick of this, and we all just want to get to the draft and see who the Jets actually take. That's why I was pretty appreciative of your, trying to predict who Joe Douglas might go after, because that's really all that matters is what Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh think. And for most picks, I think you and I, Michael, will be able to talk ourselves into whoever the Jets select. However, today, and this is going to be very important, we are going to grade every potential Jets pick. I think it's a very low chance we don't say anybody for picks 4 and 10. We did do some second rounders. It's obviously a bigger pool there. It's a lot harder to predict. So it is possible they could take somebody in the second round that we don't talk about. But the goal here is that they don't take anybody at 4 and 10 that we don't give our opinion on. And I think that's very key, because then however the draft goes, we can rationalize it and be optimistic and buy into whoever the Jets take. But I think it's important to have it on record, kind of what we're feeling here. So Michael, starting at pick number 4, and this is the easiest one to predict. I don't think there's anybody we'll list here or I don't think it's possible for them to stay at 4 and take anybody that we don't list here, because we went deep here. Most likely it'll be an edge. So we'll start there, starting with the edges. And you mentioned Hutchinson, very unlikely he makes it to the Jets, but we'll start it with him. You've seen crazier things. Maybe the Lions go with Trayvon, or maybe the Jaguars go with Trayvon Walker, the Lions go with Malik Willis, and the Texans go with Ike Mekwanu, and then bang, Hutchinson's there. Very unlikely, but you never know. If the Jets were to somehow land Aiden Hutchinson, what letter grade would you be giving that pick?
I'd have to go A plus. I think that's the dream scenario. I think he's clearly the number one player to me. I know there are concerns about how high is his ceiling, how does he compare to other elite edge prospects of the past, the Bosas of the world, the Miles Garrett's, those type of guys. I don't think he's necessarily quite at that level, but I still think he is the best prospect in this draft. Dominant production, fantastic athleticism all around. I think that'd be a home run. I don't see how he'd possibly make it there, but it would be great.
Yeah, I don't really see him making it there either. It just pure. I mean, obviously he's an amazing player. It is kind of funny because it's not exactly the same, but when Sam Darnold was coming out in 2018, the assumption was that there's no chance he makes it to 3. So when we were looking at the quarterbacks, I mean, we didn't have this podcast back then, but we were both, doing our own thing. When we were both looking at the quarterbacks, I remember really not spending that much time looking at Darnold, because you just assumed that he wasn't going to be there. And then the Jets drafted him, and then you had to do all this kind of retroactive scouting and kind of make your own opinions of him. Hutchinson's kind of the same way, where it's like, I haven't really looked too much into Hutchinson because I've always kind of figured he wasn't going to be there. I'm pretty confident that everybody has him as their number one edge. And I think the excitement factor alone of if they landed him would be A+ worthy. So I'll follow you on this one. I'm going to try to differentiate from you, Michael. But I agree with you on this one. If they get Aiden Hutchinson, it has to be an A+. Now, Kayvon Thibodeaux, who at this point has kind of emerged as, I don't want to say the most likely pick, but he's going to the Jets in a lot of mock drafts, just based on the way the board is falling. People expecting Kayvon to go maybe a little bit lower than some thought a few months ago. The Jets having a big needed edge, him being relatively a good scheme fit. If you think I think him playing in a wide 9 front is very beneficial towards him. It just depends, with Carl Lawson, maybe the Jets would want to go with a bigger defensive end to pair him with. But all that aside, it seems like Kayvon to the Jets is a pretty popular mock draft pick. And Michael, I have to say, if the Jets do go with Kayvon on draft night, it's going to be hard not to be really excited. I don't want to, flood these grades with a bunch of A's, but I'll say if the Jets get Kayvon, if they're happy with him and they're comfortable with all the off-field stuff, it's hard not to give it an A. I'll go A-, but that's really just to be, trying to cover the boxes of, there are some concerns off the field. If you look at Joe Blewett's film reviews, it's not like he's necessarily a slam dunk Chase Young level prospect, but he's still an amazing edge rusher and the first big time edge rusher I can really ever remember the Jets selecting high, actually outside of Vernon Golston. So I'll give Kayvon an A-. How about you?
Yeah, I think I'll go a half grade higher than you. I'll go with an A for this reason, because I think like you mentioned, part of the concern is the off the field stuff. But from a team perspective, if they are picking him, then I think I could feel confident that, they did their research. Obviously, they just met with him and apparently it went well. But I mean, what else do you expect them to say? But, you can feel confident that if they pick him, that they are comfortable with all of that stuff. So I think you can just look at the talent and look at the need and the scheme fit, and be very excited about that one. So I'll go to solid A.
And Trayvon Walker's the other edge that I think you see mocked to the Jets a lot. Some people have Trayvon Walker going number one. He's a very popular pick to the Lions at two. I've even seen him go three to the Texans. But if he does make it through all three picks, you'd have to imagine if Trayvon's there at four, you'd probably imagine that Kayvon went, but there's a scenario where they're both on the board. I put a tweet out this week that said, if both are on the board, who do you want? I think 90% of Jets fans said Kayvon. And then I said, okay, but who do you think the Jets would go? And again, I think it was like 88% Kayvon. So Jets fans think Jets fans would take Kayvon over Trayvon, and they think the Jets would take Kayvon over Trayvon. I don't know if I'm as sure about that. I think I would take Kayvon, but I don't know if I would rule out the Jets passing on Trayvon Walker over Kayvon. What do you think about that, Michael? I mean, obviously, I'm interested in your grade for Trayvon Walker, but what do you think if Kayvon and Trayvon are both on the board? Who do you think the Jets might lean towards if you look at some of their preferences?
Oh, I agree with you. I don't think it's a slam dunk they would take Thibodeau, because I think another tendency we've kind of seen with their picks the past few drafts is that they've had a lot of confidence in their developmental ability. I feel like they've leaned towards more moldable prospects than the more complete prospects. And obviously, Walker is, if he goes top five, he's going to be the most prime example of a player who's picked for what he could be rather than what he is, among the top five picks in recent years. So I do think they have a lot of confidence. They have a lot of confidence in their coaching staff to develop these types of players. So I think Walker has probably the highest ceiling of any of the edge rushers. So I could definitely see them thinking that they could develop that. So if they're both on the board at that point, I would definitely feel 50-50 on who they're going to pick. Not necessarily who I'd prefer, because I agree with you on Thibodeau, but who they will pick, I definitely could see either.
Yeah, I just think the ceiling on Thibodeau is so high, but I guess it's also very high on Walker. I mean, you look at his athletic score. Um, I am kind of weary of a guy whose maybe biggest red flag is his production. That's not to say he wasn't productive. And as you pointed out, we were talking before this, that his floor is a lot higher than people would think. I think it's pretty likely that Walker will come to the NFL and immediately be a fairly good run stopping defensive end. And then it's, can you develop his pass rushing ability with the traits that he has? And like you said, that does seem like a very Robert Saleh, Joe Douglas pick. Take the athlete, trust themselves to develop him. All the reports from the combine were really high. That's when you really saw him shoot up the draft boards, whereas Kayvon was a bit of the opposite. So we don't know. I don't know either Trayvon or Kayvon, but I think it is the perception is that Trayvon Walker is the football guy and Kayvon's maybe more of the brand guy. I don't know if that's actually true, but if we're going off that perception, maybe Trayvon might fit the Jets culture a little bit better. If they took Trayvon Walker, I'd give it a B plus. I'd be pretty happy with Trayvon, but I think there is you have to be a little bit patient with it. You have to be both patient with him and Kayvon, that they're not going to come in year one and immediately be amazing. They might have some great highlights and stuff, but I think both guys are going to take a little bit to develop. It's just, which traits do you want to bet on? What would you give Trayvon? I don't know if you give your answer.
I think I'll go the solid B. It obviously depends on who else is available when they make the pick. Like if Thibodeau isn't there and they take him, I'll definitely grade it higher. Against him, I'd probably take the higher floor of Thibodeau, but overall, I think B is good because there's a lot of ceiling here, but no, there is a good degree of risk considering the gap in his production versus some of these other players.
Now, the last edge we're going to talk about at number 4 is Jermaine Johnson. Now, to me, this all really comes down to how the first 3 picks go, because if the first 3 picks go, Trayvon, Kayvon, or Hutchinson, Trayvon, and Kayvon, in whatever order, and the Jets take Jermaine Johnson as the 4th edge, I think part of me might be a little underwhelmed, and it might feel like they reach for a need. Even if Jermaine Johnson wasn't their 4th edge on the board, it just might feel that way. If they get to the board and they have a choice between Kayvon Thibodeau and Jermaine Johnson or whoever, and they go with Jermaine Johnson, I might feel a little bit better about the pick because it'll be like, all right, this is their guy. Like, I'm not going to really criticize, especially after the draft they had last year. If Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas really fall in love with Jermaine Johnson, they had him at the Senior Bowl, and they think this is the guy for the system, I'll talk myself into that. But for right now, I'll say if they take Jermaine Johnson at 4, I'm between a C plus and a B minus. I know you're probably a little bit lower than me. I'll give it a B minus because if they take him, I'll talk myself into it. But and I like the prospect. I'm not going to pretend like I don't like Jermaine Johnson. But is he the best player on the board? Probably not. So I'll go C plus. Actually, C plus. How do you feel?
I'm going to go a little bit lower than you. I'm going to go to C minus, mainly because there's not a scenario where he would be my favorite pick in this spot. If all three of those other edge rushers go top three, I think I'd rather take Gardner. Um,
Or Aquanu.
we'll talk about that. We'll talk
Oh
about
God.
that.
Okay.
But but yeah, I just don't see him quite on the same tier as those other three edge rushers. He's a lot older than these guys. He's already 23 years old, and his production wasn't great either. And he has very good athleticism too, but not quite on a Walker level. And I do like the floor with him. I think the floor is good. His run defense is great, good edge setter, good length, plays with good motor, all that stuff. So I do like the floor. I don't think there's like super bust potential with him, but I'm very skeptical of the ceiling because of the lack of production at his age. He did have the sacks, but I'm more talking about like his win rate and his pressure rate and stuff like that. And there's evidence that correlates really well to the league, and his pressure rates and his win rates were about average for a college edge rusher, which at 23 years old going to the NFL, not a great sign. Um, so I wouldn't love this pick, but I would trust their judgment in making it. I think the floor is decent, and I think he's a good scheme fit for what they need. So wouldn't absolutely despise the pick, but it definitely wouldn't be thrilling, I would say.
I agree with everything you pretty much said there. I think it's just if they do take him, as I said, it really my perception of the pick will really get influenced by whoever's the first three picks. Because if it really feels like they reach for an edge, I might feel a little lower about it. Whereas if they take him over another edge prospect that we just talked about, I think you have to feel like, okay, they really believe in this guy. And remember, we're grading the pick, not necessarily the player. You might like Jermaine Johnson, but for the Jets at 4, I can see why you'd give it a C minus. And when we talk about grading the pick and not the player, I think that's something to keep in mind with Ike Ekwonu, who before Laken Tomlinson was signed was a very popular pick for the Jets. Obviously a scheme fit. You like that he could potentially play guard year one, and then it gives you the flexibility between Becton and Fant. The Jets signed Tomlinson, so there's not really a spot for him to start year one unless, you're either sending Fant or Becton to the bench. You're having a battle between the two of them. I get the argument that you want to draft the best player available. You want to look towards the long term. Ideally, you are investing in the trenches, so it is still a position you're valuing at tackle. You can let Fant walk next year, get a comp pick. It gives you insurance if Becton gets injured. You could trade one of them. I could see him doing this. I definitely think Ekwonu is still very much on the board, and I think if it gets to a point where, like, if Trayvon, Kayvon, and Hutchinson both all go in the top 3, I really do think there's a chance to go Ekwonu over Sauce, even if you think corner is the bigger need. If they take Ekwonu, I'll give it it's hard because he's a great player and he's a great scheme fit. So you like the player, you want to give it an A, but I'll give it a B plus, I guess. I mean, maybe I'll give it a B. I'm trying to be critical here. I'll give it a B, even though you really like the player. It's hard to see them take a guy that you don't really know where he's going to play year one. How would you feel about Ekwonu?
Yeah, again, I'm going to have to go a little bit lower than you. I think I'll go with a C. And honestly, this is even
That's
probably a little bit
that's
higher
low.
than I expected. But I can't hate this pick because I love the player. So it would be hard for me to just flip out about it because I do think he's probably top 3 prospect with Hutchinson and Gardner overall. So love the prospect. I can't be mad at it. But at the same time, I just think the allocation of resources, 3 straight first round picks on O line, when you have your starting 5 set, you have a lot of other issues to address, especially defensively. And there is the potential to where you don't need this player. Obviously, you might need him, and there's a good chance you will with Becton's injuries. Fant is 30, free agent, easy schedule last year, breakout year, a lot of question marks. There's a good chance they're going to need a tackle, but there is also a chance that Becton does stay healthy and pan out, and George Fant does have another good year, and you tag him or extend him. And I'm not as concerned about Fant's age because O line at 30 isn't necessarily that
Yeah,
old.
it's
We're
not the
starting to
age.
see.
It's can he do it again?
Yeah, yeah. It's
And what are
more
you going to
the
pay him? And what are you going to pay him next
right,
year?
right, and there's that as well with other O line contracts coming up already locked into Tomlinson. So there are questions, but I just feel like that this pick needs to be used on someone who you know is going to play right away, who you know has a path to being a long term starter. And if tackle becomes an issue, I think you can address it next year. Obviously you probably won't get the same level of prospect. You're not going to be hopefully not picking fourth again. But I think I just would prefer to use this pick on a different position. But I do like this player, so I'll stick with the C.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, every year we say it that they're not going to draft for need. And I see you're not even advocating to them to draft for need, but just when you look at the allocation of resources, it does make sense to maybe go elsewhere. And look, if Joe Douglas is a supposed offensive line guru, you'd hope that he could find good offensive linemen past day one. They
Right.
definitely need a tackle because if one of them goes down, Connor McDermott's playing meaningful reps, and you don't want that. I mean, they signed Morgan Moses after the draft last year, so they could still sign a veteran. But I think they need to draft a tackle. If it's Ekwonu, if the three edge guys go or Ekwanu's the top guy on the board, I can't hate it because, like you said, you love the player and you can see the path to him, on the field and stuff. But uh, just our reaction to the pick, I think you'd rather have another position at four. But sticking with the other tackle, Evan Neal, I'm going to go a lot lower on Evan Neal. I think Ekwonu is a much better fit. He makes sense to me. If they're going to take a tackle, it's Ekwonu. But if they took Evan Neal, I'll give it a D. And Evan Neal's not a D-rated player. It's just everything we laid out about Ekwonu, but a guy who fits the system worse. So I'd go D on Evan Neal.
I agree with you. That's the same grade I had. In this position, I think compared to Ekwonu, like again, with Ekwonu, at least I'd like the player a lot. I think he's a fantastic prospect. I just don't see it with Evan Neal. Um, the pass protection floor is pretty good, but I see a lot of weaknesses in the run game. And I think pass pro is more important, but in terms of scheme fit, it's the run game where you're looking. And I just don't see the same mobility. I think he leans into his blocks a lot and loses at the second level, which you can't really have in this game. So don't love this prospect or the position. So would not be very high on that pick.
Now going to the defensive backs, and I think there's really only one realistic option here, and that's Sauce Gardner. And I think the only way they take Sauce is if the three edges are gone, or if two of them are gone and they don't love Kayvon. Because there is that possibility that they get to the, if Walker, Thibodeau, and Hutchinson go and they have to choose between Ekwonu and Gardner, if you listen to what they say, it sounds like they might go Ekwonu, but Sauce Gardner, I love this player. Like, this is an A-rated player for me. I think this is a future Pro Bowl corner. I think the Jets cornerback room is solid. I think you can survive on it. Clearly, the Jets don't believe they need to invest premium assets in that. But if you have a Pro Bowler staring you in the face, I'm not saying he's automatically a Pro Bowler, but if that's how you view a certain player, it doesn't matter if he plays a quote unquote non-premium position for you, especially when that position is premium for the vast majority of the league. I'd say Sauce Gardner is an A player for me for the Jets in this situation because of the huge needs at edge and receiver. I'll go B plus. I'll give him the same grade I gave Trayvon Walker. My reaction to the pick would be a B plus, but I'm teetering on an A because I love this player. But I'll go B plus for now.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually go higher than you now. I'm gonna go to solid A, and this does kind of go against some of my football philosophies. I do believe in the pass rush over the secondary, but I just think in this instance, this is the best player. Again, it depends on who's available and everything. But
Right. If they take him over Kayvon, it's a little different, maybe.
yeah, that one would have me teetering a little bit, but if there's no Kayvon option, I think this is clearly where I'd like to go. And again, like I was saying, it's not necessarily where I lean in terms of importance and everything, but I just think this is would be by far the best player available. And that's not to say that cornerback isn't important or isn't a need, just a little bit less so than pass rush. But when the talent gap is as big as I perceive it with Gardner versus Walker, Johnson, some of these other players, and then the positional need versus O line, I think it's clearly the best pick, barring Thibodeau being available. So
Yeah.
I guess Walker would be a little bit debatable for me too, because I do like him. But this would be I think this is a very high floor pick and a very high ceiling pick, and a position I could still get better at. So I
Yeah.
would love this pick.
Yeah. And the one thing with these grades is it is without context because if they go Sauce Gardner at 4 and then at 10, let's say they land, Jermaine Johnson or whatever,
Right.
and then they at 35 they get George Pickens or maybe they trade for AJ Brown or something, with their second round picks or something. If you're walking out of there with Sauce Gardner, an edge rusher you like at 10, and a veteran receiver you trade for, how do you not give it an A? I think for right now, just because of the huge issues at edge and receiver, and the fact that if you take Sauce, I think you have to sacrifice taking one unless you trade for a veteran receiver. I'll stick it a B plus, but I almost went with an A minus. I just didn't want to. I don't want to flood these picks with A's. I mean, I guess it is top 5, so it would make sense. The other corner that is potentially in consideration here, this would be a shock. I think out of all the guys we're going to talk about, this would be the most shocking one. Well, maybe the next guy, but Derek Stingley. I don't see any way they take him at 4. Potentially at 10. I mean, I doubt that as well. But if they really fall in love with the player, but this is a guy who's had major injury concerns. We haven't necessarily seen the level of play that he put up as a freshman. I just doubt that the Jets would do this at 4. At the beginning of last year, you would have thought Derek Stingley would be a top 5 pick based off his reputation alone. But if the Jets took him at 4, I mean, I gave Evan Neal a D, so I'll go with the D on Derek Stingley. I like the player, but there's just too many questions when it comes to injuries. And the production you've seen the last 2 years.
I agree with you. I'm going to match you. I'm also going to go with the D. I kind of wanted to go lower, but I guess I could see the ceiling. But, the injuries, the declining performance, not a 4th overall pick candidate for me.
This next one's tough. Kyle Hamilton, safety, Notre Dame. I kind of want to give it an F if I'm being honest, but even though Kyle Hamilton's not an F-rated player, and we both know damn well if they took Kyle Hamilton, we could talk ourselves into him being a unicorn. I love Kyle Hamilton. Taking a safety top 5 is brutal. It's like, because even if he's good, then you're going to have to pay him, and then you're allocating big money to safety. I mean, like, look what the position the Seahawks are in with, money tied up to 2 safeties between Diggs and Adams. I'd rather just be a team that has new safeties pretty much every year or every other year, or whatever. Like, you can just sign guys like Jordan Whitehead on the free agent market or draft guys in the 2nd or 3rd rounds. And I don't think you need to make a big investment here. But at the same time, Kyle Hamilton is a great player and a good fit in this defense. And it's hard to hate on adding good players. But at 4, I'd give it an F. At 4, I'll give it an F, because there's no way that there's not a better option on the board in my eyes. Either you have Kayvon available, Hutchinson available, Walker available, Icom, or Sauce. I mean, one of those guys is going to be available. So Kyle Hamilton to me seems like a reach and a bad allocation of resources.
And in regards to what you said with the cap space, not only would it be a long-term issue, but he would immediately be being paid as one of the higher paid safeties in the league. Spot Track projects that the 4th pick will have a 2022 cap hit 6.7 million. Right now, that would rank 16th among all safeties. So obviously, you split that up into free safety, strong safety. It would be top 10 for that position. So yeah, it's a big investment to take it up there. It's not a highly valued position in the league, and that money should only really go to safeties who are huge difference makers, like Jordan Poyer, Harrison Smith, those type of players.
Well, and look, Kyle Hamilton has definitely the ability to be that. I mean, his draft profile would scream that he is going to be that. Especially, I know he didn't run the 40 time you'd like, but as you mentioned, his relative athletic score is still very good. He's obviously a complete freak physically. He's long, he's big. He kind of reminds me a bit of Justin Simmons when I watch him. He can play the box, he can play deep. I mean, I like him, and we're going to come back to Kyle Hamilton because I think him at 10 is a lot different than at 4. I wouldn't say I'd love it at 10, but I think I could get behind it at 10. At 4, I can't really see any way that I can support it. We'll come back to Hamilton in a little bit.
Yeah, so for my grade, I guess I'll go with a D minus. I don't want to go all the way to an F because I see some of the appeal, but it doesn't make sense to me.
And now for this, we just put, before we get to picks at 10, I think we've probably talked about whoever they'll pick at 4. We've probably touched on it, but the only other direction I could see him going at 4 would be taking a receiver. And we're going to talk individually about each receiver when we talk about picks at 10. But for right now, I think it's just more any receiver, because if they take a guy at 4, if they take a receiver at 4, it clearly means that's their number 1 guy, because there's no receiver that's going top 3. So how would you react, Michael? What grade would you give it? Just ignore the player. You plug in whoever your receiver number 1 is, whether it's Drake London or Jameson Williams or Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave, whatever it is. They feel like somebody's going to take him between 5 and 9. We love this player. He's our top rated guy on the board, whatever it is. If they took a receiver, what would your reaction be? Graded out of, A to F.
Yeah, well, obviously the initial reaction would just be surprise because we're not even considering this right now. So it would be surprising, but it's important what you said earlier about the added context that comes later because, you know, we have to see how the rest of this plays out. What are they missing out on by taking this risk of drafting this player at 4 that we thought would be there at 10? But I would respect the aggression and their confidence in that particular player if they're taking him this high. So I I I think that the fact that we there are 4 receivers that we like in the first round, at least one, most likely 2 to 3 will be there at the 10th pick. So I wouldn't love it for that reason, but I would respect that they're going to get their guy. So I'll go with the C, but it is contingent on the context of the rest of the draft, who they do end up with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely contingent on the rest of the draft. And the only thing I would really like about it is, like you said, it's like, all right, they're being aggressive. They clearly have a guy they like. But when you look at this receiver class, it's not as strong at the top as other receiver classes. I feel like all these guys are kind of similarly bunched together. In fact, you can make the argument that the Jets should trade down from 10 and they could still get a very good receiver in the middle of the pack. So I really wouldn't like this. I'm going to give it a D. The only thing, like you said, that would bring me back on it would be like, all right, well, they really like this player. They're trying to help out their young quarterback. You can't hate it too much. In fact, I gave Evan Neal a D and Derek Stingley a D. I'll go D plus because I think I would like it more than those picks. But I would still be like, all right, I feel like you could just go for the best player of it. I doubt that a receiver would be the best player available at that spot. So that's kind of the only reason I would be like, all right, you're reaching for a need very clearly. But when we get to 10, and let's just start with the receivers, that changes things a lot. Let's start with Drake London, who seems to be the favorite out of the receivers at 10 for whatever reason. What would you give London if they took him at 10?
I think I'd go with the I'm on the positive side here. I'll go with the B plus. Man, I might want to go a little bit higher because I do really like London. Um, I'll go with an A minus. I'm going to pump it up because I do like him quite a bit. I just think the combination of abilities, the yak, the size, and then also good sharp route running in the short to intermediate range for a guy his size. I like the combination of tools. There's questions with the athleticism and the injuries, but I'd be very happy with that selection. So I'll go with an A minus.
I think all these receivers are going to be similarly grouped for me, and how I would grade them. I think it really comes down to their preference. I think there's only really a chance that maybe one of these guys is off the board, but for the most part, the Jets should have their pick of the litter at 10. And it really just comes down to what they're looking to add. Because there's really a guy who does everything. I think if they go with Drake London, that signifies to me, number one, he's going to bring you a lot of manufactured yards. His yak by itself will help out this offense. But I think the number one reason you'd go with London, because he is a little bit outside of the archetype you would think for this LaFleur offense. Although, like you said, he's a much better route runner than people give him credit for. But the reason you would do it is because you saw what Zach Wilson did with Dax Milne at BYU. You've already seen Zach Wilson have success with this type of receiver. You haven't really seen him have the success with the smaller Elijah Moores, the Tyreek Hills. When you think of I think when Zach Wilson was drafted, we kind of saw this as this offense taking off and Zach Wilson hitting those deep shots. And last year, you didn't really see the deep ball production. Maybe that's because he was missing a big-bodied receiver to be able to throw it up to. But also, I think if you draft Drake London, I think you're giving him somebody in the intermediate range and in the short game that he can rely on consistently. Because like it's been mentioned with London, he's not just a big-bodied jump ball receiver. He's also a big physical target that can move after the catch. I am concerned about the athleticism. He doesn't have the top-end speed. This offense is really missing top-end speed. Even between, you look at Elijah Moore, he's a fast player, but he doesn't have that top extra gear, that Tyreek Hill gear. Even your running back, Michael Carter, love the player, but he doesn't have that extra gear. The Jets are missing that real burner. But if you love Drake London, bring in Drake London. I'm very confident that immediately he'll be able to help Zach Wilson in this offense. And then next year you can move on from Corey Davis and replace Corey Davis with more of the speedster. Because I think those type of receivers are maybe easier to get than a type of receiver like London. The injuries are concerning as well. If they take London at 10, I'll be pretty happy with it. I'll give it a B plus. I'll go a little bit lower than you, but that's not because I'm lower on him than you. It's just I think all these guys are going to be graded similarly. Whoever they take, it'll just signify what the Jets are looking for. Because then if you go to the next guy with Jameson Williams, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add there on London, but If you go to Jameson Williams, they would be taking him because they want to add that burner, because they want to add that elite speed. And they've been very vocal. Both the coaching staff and the front office has been very vocal about adding dynamic, explosive playmakers and what having speed at receiver can do. And I think when they're imagining this offense, when you look at what San Francisco did with Debo and Ayuk, they clearly value speed. They want guys who can, shorten your drives to one play, just by giving him the ball and throwing him deep. You're not really getting that with Drake London, but a guy like Jameson Williams, I mean, that's a one play touchdown a lot of the time. So if they go with Jameson Williams, they want that burner, that elite speed. If they take him, the injury is a bit of a question mark. Some people are saying he'll be ready by training camp. That's maybe his agents. Maybe that's a bit too optimistic. There's been some reports saying he won't be ready until November. I think that's probably on the conservative side if you listen to what the reports have been about his progress. I'll say he should be ready by the start of the season, at least the first few weeks of the season. So I'll give it a B, but only for injuries. If you ignore the injury, Jameson Williams is probably my receiver number one in this class, in which case I would give this pick an A. And who knows, maybe the injury is a blessing in disguise, because I don't know if he'd make it to 10 if he didn't get injured. So right. I'll give it I'll stick with a B plus. I'll go exactly what I did with London, because as I said, it really just comes down to what the Jets' preference is. It's not what my preference is. It's what are they looking to do? I think Drake London gives you something different, but I think you have to be happy with either player.
Yeah, I agree with what you said about, leaning towards the preference, because I'm on the same page as you in terms of not really. I mean, London's my favorite, but accounting for personal bias, just based on what I like, they're definitely all in the same tier. I think all four of these guys, London, Williams, Olave, and Garrett Wilson. So obviously with this pick here, which will presumably be between multiple choices, it'll be a preference of what they're looking for, like you said. So I'm going to kind of copy that, and I'm going to grade all these wide receivers the same. So I'll go with an A minus for Jameson Williams, but yeah, I agree.
I'm not grading them all the same, but I just think Chris Olave is up next. We're going to talk about him. I think they'll mostly be the same, but I do have my own preferences in who I think is better. I just think.
Yeah. I think for these two guys, I'm going to put them the same, because I'm close with these two. I mean, spoiler alert, I'm probably going to go a little bit lower at the next couple. But these two, I'll go the same. And most of them will be in the same range because of what you mentioned.
Now, this next guy is very interesting, and nobody talks about him as a pick of 10. And most years, Michael, especially when you get to round 2 and beyond, but it seems like there's always a wild card. Now, the Jets have been picking at the top of drafts over the last few years. So it's been fairly easy to predict, like, okay, they're going to take Zach Wilson. We kind of knew that. But Chris Olave is a guy who really does stand out to me. And I know some people would be shocked if he was the pick of 10, but this is a guy who's been extremely productive all 4 years. He is a Joe Douglas guy in terms of he was a captain, had a relative athletic score above 9. He's an elite route runner, arguably the best in the class. He's a separator. He ran a 4.22. And I think, and I was talking to Michael about this, I think sometimes when you have a guy in college who's just been producing year after year, he kind of gets overshadowed a little bit. He's not the brand new shiny thing. I mean, I remember reading about Chris Olave in last year's mock drafts before he decided to go back to Ohio State. He broke out very early at Ohio State, which, Michael, I know you could talk about next a little bit. And it's a good sign in terms of how they'll develop in the NFL. He would be a guy that would not shock me if it's very close for me between him and Jameson. Jameson has that elite game-breaking speed. Olave is not much slower than him. And in fact, they were on the same team, and Olave played over Jameson Williams, if you want to factor that in. Ohio State also had Joe Burrow as like the third-string quarterback. So you can't really factor that in too much, but I'm close between Olave and Williams. With the injury, I could maybe be convinced Olave is better. Olave is certainly the more refined route runner, but Jameson might give you slightly more speed. But again, Olave ran the 4.22. So, you know what? I'm going to stick. This is the last time I'll do this, but I'm going to give the B plus to Olave as well. And I know that might be surprising to people. And if he gets taken, some people might be shocked. But if you don't think Chris Olave is in contention to 10, you're wrong. I guarantee you that it just really comes down to what they're looking at. If they're trying to add speed and route running, you go with Chris Olave. If you want game-breaking, elite speed, you go with Jameson Williams. If you want yak and you want a big-body receiver for Zach Wilson, which is something we've seen him had success with, you go with Drake London. And then if you want, the next guy we'll talk about, but I know you want to talk about Chris Olave. If you want route running and yak, maybe you go with Garrett Wilson. It just really depends on what you're looking for. But Olave really, I think, brings the best of both worlds when it comes to that game-breaking speed, but he's also an amazing route runner, which is probably the two traits you look at when you look at the archetype for receivers in the scheme.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's definitely in play at this spot. Um, for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. I'm gonna go a half grade lower than my other options. I'll go to a B plus, but I agree with you. He's definitely in play. For me, I'm just going a little bit lower because I think like I said, I like a lot of what London brings. Jameson Williams, I think his deep speed is probably the best individual trait of any of these
Right.
receivers. And then Olave, like you said, brings all those things to the table, but I'm a little bit skeptical of his ability to break tackles.
Yeah.
Production wasn't obviously he was competing against other guys, but not the most amazing production. Didn't show the most progress with his production, but what is good about his production in college is the consistency of it. Like you said, he was around making plays for a long time. Really, since 2019, for 3 years in a row, he was a top tier producer, and that's an important trait for receivers is their breakout age, how young they are when they're first a major contributor to their offense. And he was only barely over 19 years old in 2019 when he first became a top tier producer, and that's a great signal for future success when you break out that young. Drake London also has that. I believe Jameson Williams does too. So uh, I like a lot about Chris Olave. I would enjoy be a big fan of that pick. I'll go with the B plus.
Yeah, he does. He does really strike me as a Douglas guy. Drake London does
Team
sound like
captain, he
a
checks
team
that
captain.
box.
Team captain. Drake London. The name just sounds like a Jet, and maybe that's just because they're trying to expand into the UK. Chris Olave doesn't necessarily sound like a Jet, but I really think he's in contention at 10. I just everything that's on paper about him, he's just one of those guys that I think is just going under the radar because he's kind of been in the spotlight for a few years now. People are forgetting him, but I think Olave is definitely in consideration at 10. Now, Garrett Wilson, his teammate at Ohio State, he also is an amazing route runner. I think it's a toss up between Wilson and Olave. Who's the better route runner? I would go with Olave, but Wilson is a very good route runner in his own right. And what Wilson brings you that Olave doesn't is yards after catch, because Olave will bring you yards after the catch, but that's usually, from what I've seen, is just due to his speed. Whereas Garrett Wilson can break tackles. If the Jets took Garrett Wilson at 10, I mean, a lot of people have him as their consensus number one receiver. I'd probably go with a B. And the only reason I would go a little bit lower than these other guys is I just feel like the Jets kind of already have what he would bring in Elijah Moore in terms of a great route runner and a guy you like after the catch. Whereas I feel like if you go with Olave, you get that game-breaking speed, that deep ball, which you can get with Elijah Moore, but that's actually not really what his specialty is. It's why the Jets, if you listen to a lot of people, see Elijah Moore as a slot because he's, crisp route runner. He's going to anything under 20 yards. You really got to like it. And he can break tackles. He can go deep, but that's maybe a Jameson Williams or Chris Olave. Garrett Wilson, a little too similar to me, to Elijah Moore. So I'll give it a B.
I'll go with the B plus, same as Chris Olave. Um, yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think there might be a little bit more redundancy here in terms of what they already have. But the player still has a lot of potential. Joe Blewett has went over this in his film review at JetX of Wilson, but there is a little bit more refinement needed to the route running. A lot of it is a little bit in terms of his movements, kind of elongated and exaggerated in terms of his break steps and things like that. And it obviously worked in college and gives him great potential because of how quick and sharp he is. But against better corners in the NFL, might need to be a little bit tighter. So I think there is maybe that aspect needs a little bit more growth than maybe given credit for, but obviously he still has great speed, yak ability. I like these four receivers, and
Yeah.
I definitely want to see them get one of them at 10. So I'll go with the B plus. I like London and Williams the most, even considering the injuries, which is a little bit of a change because I know our last podcast I wasn't as high in Williams, but I've come around a little bit. So those two are my favorite, just a slight bit above Olave and Williams, but I like all four in Wilson. But I like all four. And again, I would trust that they're picking the skill set that they like the most for their offense, like you said.
The last guy we have to consider here when you look at the receivers at 10 is Traylon Burks. And I don't think he'll be in consideration at 10. I think he became a little bit of a draft darling for a few months ago. When you look at his highlights, he obviously has a lot of traits that you like, but I think the more people have looked into his film, his route running needs a lot of work. He's very raw, and it's a tough buy at 10 when you need immediate receiver help for your young quarterback. And he played a lot in the slot. He had a lot of free releases. I mean, he's a guy who needs a lot of refinement. Obviously, you love what he can do at the catch point. You love what he can do after the catch. He is a versatile guy. You could probably use him like a Deebo Samuel, but I just think his route running and his general receiving traits just needs too much refinement for the Jets to rely on him at 10 because they didn't go after a veteran. So if they took Traylon Burks, I'll give it a D. I mean, a part of me would be excited because he's an exciting player, but I just think that there are better receivers that they could go with at 10.
I agree. This is a D for me. I think he kind of, with his pre-draft process, the combine, and also people just kind of collectively analyzing the player closer versus the beginning of the draft process where, people haven't gone into it as much. It wasn't a good process for him. I don't think he's a player worthy of this pick. Athleticism, not as good as we thought it was going to be. Pretty low RAS at 5.82. And on film, I think you mentioned a lot of the stuff that's concerning about him, but also like his effort isn't great. You see him not try on blocks sometimes, which is not gonna fly in this game. So would not. I'm actually. Should I go lower? Yeah, I'll go F. This is my first F.
All right. Well, wow, you've been a little bolder. I mean, I feel like he's a guy who has exciting traits, but like you said, I really don't see it. We almost didn't even put him here at 10, but just we don't want to say anybody that, or we don't want to not talk about somebody they could potentially pick.
I'm actually going to upgrade it back to D because I'll watch some highlights. Be like, hey, you know what? I'll have that sort of thing going on.
It's all coming. So, we already know that's coming next week.
Going with the D here.
All right. When you look at the defensive backs here, Sauce Gardner, there's a chance he makes it to 10. I mean, a lot of people have him. I mean, in my mock, I had him going 3 to the Texans. But there's a chance if he slips past the Giants that he could make it to 10. If he made it to the 10 and the Jets got him, I think I give this an A+. Even with the need at receiver, look, you have 2 seconds. You can maybe make a move for veteran, trade back into the first, take a guy at 30, whatever it is. But you have to draft best player available. And Sauce Gardner at 10 is unequivocally the best player available in my eyes.
I agree. This would be incredible value. It's an A+.
Now, Derek Stingley at 10, it's a lot different for me because at 10, I mean, this is a guy who the ceiling on Derek Stingley is incredibly high. And again, his freshman season, which is what everybody talks about, is among the best ever seen from a college cornerback. The last 2 years, a little bit smaller dip in production. He's battled injuries. They take him at 10. I'll go B-, because I like the player a lot. And if they take him, clearly they believe in his abilities and his injury report, not major red flags or anything. So I'll give it a B-. But you know what? I might go low. I'm gonna go C+ actually, because I just feel like I think for me at corner, it's pretty much either Sauce or nothing in round 1. Otherwise, I feel like you can just go invest in corner later in the draft. Because I'm comfortable with the room right now between Reed and Hall and Michael Carter II. So I'll go C+ for Stingley.
I'm gonna go with the C. I was thinking of going with the B because I think the ceiling here is probably higher than any other player taking here, but I just like these receivers too, because obviously in this scenario, you took an edge rusher at 4 or a receiver, but most likely not that. It was probably an edge rusher or O lineman. So in this scenario, the receiver is still a need, and I like those prospects too much for me to take the risk of Stingley, but at the same time, the ceiling is the risk is acceptable for the ceiling here. I just prefer other options, so I could understand it, but not my preference. So I'll go C.
Now, we just put other cornerback for this next one, and I guess the guys you'd be considering here are Andrew Booth and Trent McDuffie. And not to be disrespectful to those guys, because I've seen I've seen those guys go in top 10 in mocks. It's very possible that they could be the number 1 player on the Jets board when 10 rolls around. But I think it's just a non-Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley corner. That would be very out of left field, but definitely in consideration here. Michael, I'll go to you first. How would you grade it if they took one of the two? And maybe you have a different grade for each one, but if they went with a non-Stingley Gardner corner, how would you feel?
I'm gonna go with the C-. I think it's maybe I should go lower than that because again, I just like the receiver talent, and also the edge talent here. Um, oh well, again, in the scenario, I guess you're not considering that, but I just man, I there's probably a higher floor with both of these guys than Stingley, but man, just I don't. I like the receivers too much to be taking corner. I know you don't want to lean towards need, but I don't think either of them are. They're good prospects, but probably more mid to late talents. Where I like the receivers enough to consider them as 10th pick worthy talents. So I'll go C minus.
Yeah, I'll go C. And the only reason I went a little higher than you here is because I don't want to fall into the trap of giving a lower grade to a guy that I haven't really looked too much into and maybe not the ideal need that I would fill here. Because if they fall in love with Andrew Booth or Trent McDuffie and they have them as a top 10 player on their board and that they have them as the number 2 corner on their board behind Sauce and whatever it is, if they really fall in love with one of these guys, that's the only way they take one at 10 in my eyes. They're not it's like they're not taking them just because that's the common sentiment among draft nicks is that they should take this position or this player. It would be out of left field if they really love one of these guys. I'll give it a C. I wouldn't be like wowed by it, but I have no doubt that if they took one of these guys and I start looking into them, I could kind of hype myself up about it. But I'm not expecting, if they don't go with Sauce, I don't expect for them to go corner until day 2. And maybe they wait till day 3. If they're, last year they waited till day 3 to even get one guy and they didn't even have a guy like DJ Reed or Michael Carter II or Brandon Eccles or anybody. I mean, they really just were completely barren and they saved it all the way to day 3. So I think you could see a similar draft strategy now that they have a cornerback room they're more comfortable with. But I'll give it a C for now. Kyle Hamilton, the other DB I wanted to talk about. At 4, I hate it. At 10, again, the context of, okay, did they trade for a veteran receiver? Because if they take, let's say they get Kayvon at 4, they trade 35 and 38 for fill in veteran receiver, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, whoever it is. And then they take Kyle Hamilton at 10. I know we don't love the positional value safety, but it's very possible that he's the number 1 guy on their board. I know we don't want to invest that much into safety, but if he's the number 1 guy on your board, you've seen what the safety position has done for Buffalo. The way the league has gone, throwing deep. I mean, maybe it's not the worst idea to have a great safety play. I'll go B minus here because the positional value safety is really a tough pill to swallow here, especially since it's the exact pick they gave up for Jamal Adams. But hey, maybe trading Jamal Adams and getting back Kyle Hamilton and AVT is not the worst trade in the world. So I don't know. I'll give it a B minus, but I would be more partial to taking receiver. But I'm trying to fight the need based evaluation.
I'll agree with you and go the B minus. I'd be okay with it at this spot. Not the most thrilling because I think there are some questions, not necessarily slam dunk pick, but they do still need a safety. They only have one solid starter with Whitehead. So still need a long-term option and a starter for this year next to him. Obviously they have Joyner to compete for that, but you can upgrade, I think. So still in need, and I think the talent is more feasible at the 10th pick.
Yeah, and then lastly, I put Daxton Hill here. I very much doubt that they would take Daxton Hill at 10, but a lot of people have seen him rise and have had him. I've seen him a lot as a top 15 pick. So I'll throw him in here. I gave it a D. We don't have to spend too much time on him, but if they took Daxton Hill, I imagine you probably wouldn't be as pleased as Hamilton.
Yeah, I agree with you on a D. It would just be out of left field, I think.
All right, now looking at the edge rushers at 10. So I guess for this, assume that they went with either a Sauce or a receiver or somebody at 4, offensive lineman. There's the edge rusher we put here at 10, Jermaine Johnson and George Karlaftis. I think it goes without saying if they got a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau at 10, it's an A+. Let's just assume those guys are gone. Jermaine Johnson at 10, Michael, what are you giving him?
I'm going to be here. I think it makes a lot more sense at this point. Yeah, I just think the talent at number 10 is a better match for his skill set than the 4th pick. And obviously, at this point, you've probably taken Sauce at 4 or O-line or something else. So you still have that need at edge. I think the pick makes sense here. Don't love the prospect, so I won't go higher than a B, but I do like him at this spot.
Now, I'm peeking at your notes, and before I see that you have George Karlaftis as an A. So clearly you like Karlaftis more than Johnson. I
Yes.
guess explain your rationale there.
I feel like with Karlaftis, what intrigues me about him is the fact that he has high floor traits and his strength, his run defense, his power, ability, to hold ground more so. I want to differentiate between those two things. Strength, I'm talking more like bull rushing. I mean, I guess they're the same thing, but those two adjectives. But he can bull rush. He can hold his ground against the run. So he has like those high floor sort of traits. But obviously, the question is more so the ceiling. But the reason I'm intrigued about him is because he's one of the youngest prospects, not even 21 years old yet, and he's raw to the game. Having come over from Greece as a teenager, didn't really start playing it until high school. So younger prospect, raw in the sport. I think that gives him a lot of upside that he might not be given credit for. And his athleticism is pretty good too. His vertical jump and broad jump were great. That's obviously a good sign for explosiveness. His shuttle was good. So I think he's a lot more potential than people give him credit for. In addition to the floor, we know he has. I like his fit to sort of take that JFM role in this defense, kick JFM inside, and then Karlaftis on the edge can set the edge and play the run just as well, but also have more pass rush juice. I really like Karlaftis as at 10. That's one of my favorite possibilities for the Jets in this draft. So I'm going to go with an A.
Yeah, if they miss out on an edge, I hear the Karlaftis hype. The difference in my reaction between him and Jermaine Johnson wouldn't be that much, but I agree that I think Karlaftis is getting underrated, and I think he would be a fantastic fit here. I'd like him slightly more than Jermaine Johnson. I gave Karlaftis a B plus and Jermaine Johnson a B. I like both prospects. I think it would be surprising if they took Karlaftis over Jermaine Johnson, especially since they had the Senior Bowl with Johnson. But the more I've looked into George Karlaftis, it's hard not to like him, especially at 10. Now, potential offensive linemen at 10, this would be, again, out of left field. We could fly through some of these because these are the less likely of the options at 10. In our mock draft that we did, I think last week, we had Ike Ekwonu going at 9 to the Seahawks. So I very much doubt that he would make it to 10, but just to be sure, if the Jets got Ike Ekwonu at 10, assuming they got an edge rusher at 4, you can't hate on the pick. I would give it an A. Evan Neal, if he fell to 10, which I don't expect to happen at all, I guess I'd give it I don't really like Evan Neal that much. I'll give it a B minus, I guess I would say. I mean, Evan Neal at 10 is tremendous value, but I don't necessarily love the player. I realized I didn't really give you a chance to respond. So Ekwonu and Neal, if those guys somehow make it to 10, how would you grade them?
Ekwonu is a hard one here because talent-wise, it's just an amazing value. I still don't love the position, but
Oh,
I
come
guess
on.
you can't overrate the need. So I'll go with an A minus.
Yeah,
I'll go with
okay.
an A minus.
As
For
long as it's in the A.
Neal, I'll do C plus. C. I don't like Neal.
How would you feel about now this guy? This is a guy who I was talking about on Twitter yesterday, Trevor Penning, who I've seen a lot, top 15 in mocks. I've seen him go 9 to the Seahawks. I mean, a lot of the media falls in love with Trevor Penning. And I think part of it is because you see those clips of him at the Senior Bowl just throwing defensive ends around. And so he gets tagged with that, oh, he's nasty. And I'm sure he is. And he definitely has traits that you would like. His athleticism, I think his future could potentially be at guard. I like Trevor Penning, but I don't. If I'm being completely honest, I don't like Trevor Penning. I hate Trevor Penning at 10. And I think he's a good example of a guy who the media rates extremely highly, and then he can surprisingly fall out of the first round or at least have a big draft day slide. Because the more I watch him, I'm not impressed. I see him getting beat off the ball a lot. And I think that whole nastiness of throwing a defensive end around is all fine and dandy until you throw him into your quarterback and your quarterback tears his ACL, or maybe you're in practice and you throw Carl Lawson and he tears his other Achilles or whatever. Like that whole nastiness thing, you're not really finishing the rep or helping. There's a time and a place for it. Mekhi Becton, I think, is very good at it. Ike Ekwonu has been very good at it of when to launch, defensive players and throw them around. But the way Trevor Penning does it, a lot of times it's like he loses a rep, he holds on, and then he just wrestles them to the ground. And it's not really impressive to me. At 10, it's an absolute F for me. At 35, if he fell all the way there, which I know sounds surprising, and maybe it won't be Trevor Penning, but I guarantee you there will be somebody who's available at 35 that nobody thought would be available. If he's there at 35, I would maybe give it a C or something, but at 10, it's an absolute F. And Charles Cross for me, just for the sake of time, at 10, that's a D for me. I mean, he's a good player. I like him more than Penning, so I'm not going to put him as an F. But I don't like the value of Charles Cross at 10. Even though he's a great player, you can't hate on it too much. But he's with the need and everything we've talked about with the other guys. I just don't like it. How do you see Penning and Charles Cross at 10?
Yeah, these would be the two picks, which I'm glad we included because surprising stuff does happen. Um, and you got to be ready for it. So I guess these are the two most remote possibilities. Penning is a clear F for me. That'd be atrocious. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see him as a top 10 talent in general. And I've explained my thoughts on picking an O lineman. And I mean, he had 16 penalties last year against FCS competition. So that's just a no for me. Cross is, like you said,
I
much
just don't
better than.
see it. Why
Yeah,
is
I don't
why
I
is
don't
Trevor
see it.
Penning a top 15 player on most boards?
I think we're gonna see the league not be as high on him because pretty much again, I haven't watched every single snap of his career or anything, but all I've seen is him just, a tough guy act that's not actually good football. So he's no good to me. Charles Cross is better than him, but still I don't see as a 10th pick option, so D minus.
All right, and then before we get to the second rounders, here are the other out of left field guys they could potentially go with. I'll be shocked if they take somebody at 10 that we haven't talked about here. I'll be utterly shocked. But just to mention them, we'll start with Devin Lloyd, who I think is on the board here. I mean, we know Saul loves his linebackers. I think he is still. I know there's C.J. Mosley, and I know they like Quincy Williams, but I think he is still looking for his Fred Warner. Devin Lloyd, you love his versatility. I think he's established himself ahead of Nakobe Dean as the top linebacker in this class. We didn't really include Nakobe Dean. We have him as maybe one of the guys who could fall to the second, which would be awesome if Nakobe Dean would be available at 35. I just don't think he's in consideration at 10, so let's not consider him. Devin Lloyd, if they took him at 10, it'd be tough not to be excited about the player because Devin Lloyd is one of my favorite players in this class. And we know teams don't draft for needs, so I'm trying not to skew it too much. But if they took Devin Lloyd, I'll go B minus. I love the player. That's the only reason it's high. The positional value, it's tough, but you saw the impact that Micah Parsons had last year. Obviously, well, actually, it's a fairly similar defense, and I think Devin Lloyd could play a similar role where he does blitz a lot. I think he would be an impactful player year one, and I think you're getting a good football player. So I'm not going to hate on it too much. I'll give it a B minus.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't hate this, even though we're not talking about it, just because I think linebacker is a bigger need for this team than given credit for, and B, a more important position in general. So I would not hate this pick actually, but still wouldn't love it just because I think, like I said, I like the wide receivers. So and also the age is a little bit concerning. He's 24, which is which is a lot for a first round pick.
That's
Um,
tough. I forgot he's
so
24. Ugh.
and when you Google it, sometimes it comes up that he's 36. So at least it's not that. But he's 24.
Probably a different Devin Lloyd.
Most likely. Um, but I mean, McCagnon would still pick him though. That's for sure.
It is
Uh,
tough to talk about a 24-year-old linebacker as pick 10.
yeah. So I'm gonna go
Ah,
C plus, but I like the player, and I see it as a bigger need than most do. So I'll go C plus. And also, he is a Joe Douglas guy with the relative athletic score and being a team captain, and he played with the national team at the Senior Bowl. So
I'll
that
keep
stuff is
it.
there.
I'll keep it as a B minus, partially because I think if Saul is taking him, if Saul and Douglas are taking him, they clearly love the prospect. They see him as their next Fred Warner or Micah Parsons or whatever, and I would expect him to have an impact year one. So I'm not going to hate it. But like you said, there are a lot of red flags there. The only other guy that I think that we haven't talked about that they could potentially take at 10 would be Jordan Davis, which would be completely out of left field. I got to be honest, I really wouldn't like this pick. Jordan Davis is a great player. Um, I'm going to go D minus on this. I just it's hard because Jordan Davis is a good player, and I think interior defensive line is a need for this team. It is a valuable position. I just think when you look at the allocation of resources on this team and the needs that they have and the players that are going to be in the board here at 10, I just think you can go a different area than Jordan Davis. That's not to say they shouldn't circle back to defensive tackle on day two, but at 10, D minus.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the D. I I agree. I see defensive tackles in need. I think they're going to take one in the second round, but at this position with this player, the potential is great, but this is a guy who didn't show a lot of pass rushing ability um, in college, so there's a lot of development there. The floor is good, I think, but you're drafting him here. What you're getting is for now just a two down run stuffer. I think this team is in a position where it needs more than that in terms of the floor and the certainty of what you're getting.
Yeah, let's look at the second rounders, and we can start with the defensive tackles because I think this is where you'll see if the Jets go with an interior defensive lineman. I think day two is when you want to start looking at it because there's a lot of guys in this area. We put four here. We did put Davis. I highly doubt he would last until 35. If he does, I'd give this pick an A. I like Jordan Davis. I'd give him an A, even for some of the things that you talked about. I don't expect him to be there at 35, but look, if a team doesn't want to burn a first round pick on you know a two down interior defensive lineman, maybe he falls 35. I don't see him getting past some of the contenders, but I would give him an A. Quickly, how would you feel about Jordan Davis at 35?
Yeah, I think that would be an A plus. I don't see it happening.
Yeah. His teammate Devontae Wyatt is a lot more likely. How would you feel about Wyatt? I mean, how do you think he compares to Davis? And what grade would you give him at 35?
Yeah, he's interesting in this spot because I think the talent and the skill is exactly what they're looking for. But to circle back to age, like we talked about with Lloyd, he's 24, so another questionable pick in the age department. But skill set wise, I think he checks a lot of boxes in terms of two-way ability. He was probably more productive overall than Davis was actually, which again I guess you expect because he's 2 3 years older. But I'll go with B considering the age.
Yeah, I'll go. I think B is a fair grade for him. I like the player, like you said, but the age knocks him down a peg for me. Travis Jones, who I think is a very clear Douglas guy. There's a lot of connections between the Senior Bowl, captain, athletic score, fit in this defense. I think he's a guy to definitely keep your eye out for. How would you feel about him at 35 or 38?
Yeah, I think this is an A for me. A lot of boxes checked. Team captain. The athleticism's great. I think he plays the role that you want. More of an interior guy, sort of that Foley role, one tech, two eye tech, can stop the run. Still has pass rush upside. Not super old. I think he's 22, so he checks a lot of boxes. Really like him here.
Yeah, I'll give an A to Travis Jones as well. I think he just makes a lot of sense. And then the last defensive tackle, Perrion Winfrey, who won Senior Bowl MVP, playing in this exact same system. Sounds like he should be available at 35, 38. He's a guy to definitely keep your eye out for. Who do you clearly? I think you prefer Travis Jones over Perrion Winfrey, but how do you feel about Winfrey's fit with the Jets? What would you grade him?
Yeah, I think the fit is good. I guess my concern versus Jones is looking at some of his numbers. He's not as balanced two way. I think the pass rush upside is probably better, but the run defense does seem to be a question. Looking at his production in that phase, so not as good of a two way player. And need wise, I don't think it is as much of what they need. And in terms of finding a place where he'll fit on the line and get immediate snaps this year. So I think Jones is a better fit for the need, but Winfrey does have good pass rush upside. So I'll go with the B minus.
All right, let's go to the safeties, which I think is a very likely position for the Jets to address in the second round. I guess we'll start with Luisine, who is risen up draft boards. I don't expect him to be available at 35 or 38, but if he was, I'm going to give this pick an A. I think he is, outside of Daxton Hill, who I guess we'll talk about next, is the best safety that the Jets could take when you look at his fit and what the Jets are looking for in their safeties. I'd give Cine an A.
Yeah, I agree. Just looking at where his stock is trending, it doesn't seem like he'll be here. So he'll be that type of pick where we're rooting for the fall for a while. So it'll have that exciting element to it. So I agree. I'll go with an A.
All right, so an A for Scene, and then for Daxton Hill, I don't expect him to make it here, but especially I don't expect him to make it past the Lions, who have a huge needed safety at the top of the second, and they have two picks in this area. So I think one of these safeties is going to go off the board here. I don't expect him to be here, but again, I think you have to give uh, similar grade to C. I'll give an A. I'll give an A to Daxton Hill. Either of those safeties, I think you have to give an A to.
Yep, I agree. I would go with an A.
Now Brisker is the guy who I do think very possible he could be on the board. He's more of a box safety. That's not to say he can't play coverage. Um, he could find success in this defense, but I think with the Jets already having Jordan Whitehead, who is not just a pure box safety, but probably better utilized closer to the line of scrimmage, I think I kind of see Brisker in a similar role. So for that reason, I'll give this a B minus. But he does check a lot of the boxes athletically, and he's still a damn good football player. I just if they feel like they can make it work between him and Whitehead, I'd just be worried about not really having a coverage focused safety starting out there.
Yeah, I agree. That's a little bit of the concern, but he is another Joe Douglas guy in terms of being a team captain and having the top tier athleticism, 9.14 RIS. So does check those boxes. I agree with your concerns. I think it's a good talent value though. So I'll go with an A minus.
And then the other safety we listed, we went with Jalen Petrie, who I think would be a reach here at 35 or 38. But you never know. They had him in the Senior Bowl. He had a good performance. I'll give him a C because I think, I would prefer one of these other safeties. But if they have him as the guy they like, so be it. But I'll give it a C.
Yeah, I think I analyzed some of the numbers of all the top safeties, and he had the highest missed tackle rate of any of
Take him
the
off the board.
top seven safeties I looked at. Hamilton, Hill, top six: Hamilton, Hill, Seen, Brisker, and Petrie, or at least of those top five. He had the highest missed tackle rate, and he played the fewest deep safety snaps. So at least based on those things, I don't think he's my favorite safety here. So I'll go with the C.
All right. So that knocks out the safeties and the defensive tackles. The other positions, and I know it doesn't work like this, but the other positions that could go, well, let's go to the linebacker core first, because we've already talked about two of these guys. Actually, we didn't really talk about Nakobe Dean. I think Nakobe Dean for me is, I don't want to say you know what I will say? I think he is my dream scenario for somebody falling to 35 or 38, because I think he's a guy who's hyper productive, definitely can contribute in this. I mean, his instincts at linebacker is second to none in this class. I think the reason he's going to fall is due to his size. I mean, people don't love an undersized linebacker. He's because of his size, he's going to cross himself off for pretty much every single 3-4 team, unless you want to be like the Jets, who took Darren Lee and then tried to force him to be a 3-4 inside linebacker. But I think if you have a 4-3 and you have Nakobe Dean, you allow him to play in space and rely off his instincts and his play recognition. And, watch him in that national championship game, man. He flew around the football. He's a damn good football player, and he's just a guy I'm hoping falls just due to teams having size concerns and preferring to go somewhere else. I would give him an A. I mean, him and Lloyd, I think are both A's for me. I guess Lloyd's maybe an A plus, but I think Nakobe Dean is the dream scenario for me in round two.
Yeah, I'd give this an A plus at this spot. I love Nakobe Dean. I don't see why he isn't being more highly regarded. His production is incredible just across the board. His tackling, coverage, run defense, blitzing, just incredible efficiency everywhere. And he backs it up when you watch it. I have watched a decent amount of him, and he does back up all those things you see in the numbers, just with his instincts and his reactivity and ability to finish plays. He's one of my favorite prospects. So if they could get him here, I would be a huge fan of it. That would definitely, I would have I would have a vocal reaction to this one. I'd love this.
Yeah, me too. I imagine Devin Lloyd would also be an A plus for you.
Yeah, yeah. At this spot, I'll go with an A plus. I don't think I'm not as big of a Lloyd fan as a Dean fan, but here I think both players are A plus values.
The last linebacker we put here, and again, this is where it's like they could go if they fall in love with a different linebacker, they could go, elsewhere. I put Chad Muma here. I think he's probably the leading number 3 linebacker. There's been a lot of connections between him and the Jets. How would you feel about Chad Muma in round 2?
Yeah, I think this one right now is kind of the toughest to gauge because it feels like his value a couple months ago was more in that 4th, 3rd round range, and he's just skyrocketing right now. So, I mean, I guess if he went here, you would have to understand that he probably legitimately deserves it. So there's a lot to like with him. I think a lot of Jets fans have kind of identified him as a fan favorite. He's got the team captain status, athleticism, Senior Bowl connection. Seems to be a really good off the field guy. And most of all, I think he brings coverage skills. I was looking at some of the linebacker analytics, and he does have a little bit more of a question mark in terms of tackling and run defense, but the coverage is top notch. So I think that's the most important thing that they need out of these guys. So I'd be a pretty I like that a lot. Not quite as obviously the other two are I think first round talents. So um they would be A pluses. Muma not quite, but I'd still be a huge fan. I'll go A minus.
All right, and then when you look at the corners, and this is a position now, if they could go and attack it at 35 or 38, obviously if they don't get a Sauce or a Stingley. For me, I only really see him going corner if a guy like a Booth or a McDuffie fell. I guess first, how would you grade? We'll start with Andrew Booth. I doubt he gets a 35. In fact, I see really no path for him to hit 35. But if he hit 35, how would you grade it?
I think I'm gonna be completely honest. I did not hear which guy you just said
Andrew
because I was
Booth.
looking.
Andrew Booth. It's all
Okay,
right.
okay.
We've all been there.
Um, yeah, I think I think it would be a good value here. I'm gonna go with I'll go with an A. The value is good because I think we're talking about a lot of those guys right now where, and we talked about the high second round and how valuable it can be. I think when you talk about Booth, Dean, Lloyd, Scene, Hill, these are some of those players where they kind of make that slide like Elijah Moore did last year. And it's something you don't even consider pre-draft, but then just kind of happens because some players get reached for in that late first and they
Yeah.
slip. So I think these guys are candidates for that. Booth, I would give an A, that
Yeah.
value here.
I don't see Booth making it to 35. McDuffie, maybe. I mean, again, very unlikely. I would give McDuffie an A. I think, like you said, you can't really just grade on positional value. You just have to think about who are the best players. Are the Jets getting we talked about it a lot, how that top of the second round is great because good players fall. So you just have to be willing to take the best players available and not be attached too much to positions. So if Booth or McDuffie fell, I'd give either of them an A. I think guys like McCreary and Elam are more realistic in terms of corners that'll be available at 35 and 38. How would you grade those guys who don't necessarily have the first round appeal? Well, I think both those guys could go in the first round, but aren't necessarily as universally widely regarded as a Booth or McDuffie, but are still very good football players in their own right.
Well, I will say that McCreary is one of the guys who comes up when I filtered for players who have a very low chance of being drafted by the Jets. Low relative athletic score, 548, doesn't make up for it by being a captain. So he is on that list. It's worth noting. And it seems talent wise to be right around where he's supposed to go. So just based on my, very specific Joe Douglas research, wouldn't love it based on that. So I'll go with the C for him. Elam does seem to be a little bit more highly regarded, better athletic profile. So I'd go with the B for him.
I have an aversion to Florida defenders, though. I can't, it's just like
That's true.
I'll give him slightly
He's
higher.
not an edge rusher though. It's
He
specifically
isn't.
edge rushers.
He isn't an edge rusher, so I'll give him a C plus. I guess I'll give him a career C and him and Elam a C plus. All right. Well, looking at the other positions we haven't talked about, offensive line, and this guy, I very much doubt makes it to 35 or 38, but he is a bit scheme specific. He plays a position that I think a lot of teams don't see as premium. It's possible. Tyler Linderbaum, who some fans have in consideration at 10, but when you look at the board, it'll take Cincinnati passing on him. Jacksonville wants to invest in their offensive line. It'll be tough for him to make it to 35, but if he did, A plus has to be an A plus for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just go with an A plus because I'm a huge fan of this player's value. Before they signed Tomlinson, I was a fan of taking him potentially at 10 and sliding McGovern over. That was something earlier we were talking about. So at 35, the value is too good.
Next is Kenyon Green, who I think could be on the board here, and it's a good example of a versatile offensive lineman. I think Joe Douglas would like a player like Kenyon Green, but the center is the one position he hasn't played. I think he did say he'd be comfortable with playing it at the combine, if I remember correctly. I think Kenyon Green's a damn good football player. I'd give this a B because I don't really see the immediate place he could play. And also, I kind of feel like his future's at guard, which is where I think you're the most confident in with the Jets. But It's not a bad thing to add a good offensive lineman who's versatile. So I'll give it a B.
I think yeah, the talent would be good, and I do think they're going to take an off developmental O lineman on day 2 or early day 3. This would be a little early for that, but he is a good talent value here. I'll match you. I'll go with the B.
And then I think we both said Trevor. Well, I don't know if we give our grades, but Trevor Penning, if they took him at 35, it's tough because
I'm
you know
still
what,
going a D. I just don't
you
like
know
this
what, I'm
player.
gonna go down on Kenyon Green. I'm gonna push him down to a C. I'll keep Trevor Penning at a D. I don't think, yeah, it's tough. Well, but Penning is kind of like maybe the ideal guy not the ideal guy. We don't like him as much as a player, but in terms of if they want to take a developmental tackle to sit behind Becton and Fant and potentially take over for Fant or whatever. I mean, you can't hate on Penning at you can't hate too much on Penning at 35 or 38 just based off his the way the rest of the league season. But personally, you and I both aren't really high on Penning, so I'll keep him at a D. All right, I think the only position we didn't talk about was edge. And so this is in the case that the Jets go with Ekwonu at 4 and a receiver at 10, whatever. This is a very good edge class, especially when you get deeper and around picks 35 and 38. And we haven't really talked too much about these guys. We'll start with Boye Mafe, who really impressed me at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he blew my socks off when I was watching him. I mean, his burst, his bend, super impressive. Maybe he's better in a 3-4 because he's a little smaller. But it's hard not to love Boye Mafe. So let's say the Jets don't get an edge at 4-10. Michael, how would you react to Boye Mafe?
Yeah, he has really good pressure numbers and things like that, as does Arnold Ebiketie. So I think there's really good depth in this edge class. If as much as we want a guy in the top 10, and I think they'll definitely get one. If somehow it plays out that they don't, I think there are still guys you could feel really good about here. So I'm gonna just to talk about both these guys at once. I guess for both Ebiketie and Mafe, I'm assuming in this scenario you didn't take an edge rusher already, so I'll just go with an A for both of them.
Yeah, for me, Ebiketie's an A plus at the spot. Boye Mafe, I'll give an A. I love both players. I think Ebiketie's maybe they're both good fits. But Maffe's a little small. That's the only reason I would give him an A. Cameron Thomas from SDSU. I can't pretend like we've done looked too much into him, but he is an edge. He's been going, in this range. I think the one thing that he has over Ebiketie and Mafe, and the next guy we're going to talk about is size. He's more of a prototypical 4-3 defensive end. But again, he's a bit out of left field. If they don't get an edge, I'll give him a B minus. And if in all transparency, I'm not going to pretend to know too much about this player, but we did list him because we didn't want to, have anybody that we haven't talked about. How would you react to Cameron Thomas?
Yeah, I'll be honest as well. I don't know as much as him as the other two players we talked about and some of the other guys here. So obviously my reaction can't be too strong if I don't know too much about the player. So that's something also I've learned watching drafts over the years. You shouldn't react to players if you don't really know them that much. It doesn't really make sense to a lot of times I'm talking years ago when I was a younger Michael Nania, but you would just see the position be like no or yeah, but I don't actually know the player at all. And I'm more talking later rounds, but just if you don't really know the prospect, you shouldn't react to it too strongly.
It's a good lesson, for sure. Yeah, I think with all three of these edge rushers, I mean, I know I like Mafe and Ebiketie. They're both. I know a lot more about them than Cameron Thomas, so you're right. I think this one's a bit of a wash, but I'd give it a B minus. I mean, look, I think once you get past day one, I think it's fair to have your own opinions on the guys to take at 4 and 10, and hell, maybe even 35 and 38. But past that, I'm not going to really pretend like I know more than Joe Douglas or Robert Saleh and their entire scouting department. I mean, those are guys who have been studying this the entire year. They know exactly what the coaching staff is looking for. They've been able to meet with these guys. So my attitude, especially when we get to day 3, it's always fun to see them draft somebody that you know their name, but a lot of times the best players are the guys that nobody's really even heard of. So you can't.
What was that joking text I sent you during last year's draft? It was someone, I think it was Eccles or one of the guys we never really talked about.
Sherwood.
And I was like, I'm fed up with this draft. I think we should fire Douglas.
Yeah, Sherwood was the first guy they took that I'd never heard of. And then they went on a spree of taking guys that I've never heard of. The last guy we listed here, I don't think they would take him at 35 or 38, but if they didn't get an edge, this would be, I don't see them doing this, but this is maybe more of a guy that they would consider if he was available in the third, even if they did take an edge, David Ajabo, who blew out his Achilles at his pro day, super unfortunate. You have to imagine his freshman year, his rookie season would be a redshirt season. But again, still a really tantalizing prospect. So this is a guy that I don't think the Jets have the luxury of taking, especially at 35 or 38. If he's available in the third, maybe they would do it. 35 or 38, I have to give this, a D maybe. But at in the third round, I would maybe give it like a B or an A. Probably a B. I mean, but he's an A-level player. Mike, how would you feel about David Ajabo?
I put a B here because I think it's a really good talent value. I think if he didn't suffer his injury, he might be in that conversation, right, with some of these other first round edge rushers to go very highly. So I think
he may have been in the conversation at 4.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the talent value is really good here, and in spite of the injury. Scheme fit, a little bit questionable on the smaller side, more of like a 3-4 outside linebacker. So that's a question mark. But production, athleticism, and overall talent for this spot, I think is really good, even if you have to redshirt.
Yeah, and he's got the entire year to gain weight and muscle. So no,
Right.
but I think the concern, especially for edge rushers, and this is why the injury to Carl Lawson was such a bummer, is you just an Achilles injury, and this is I've had a bunch of Achilles surgeries. It's hard to come back from an Achilles surgery. And I think Carl Lawson can definitely do it, but it's no sure thing. It's in fact, you'd rather have a guy tear an ACL than an Achilles because you just don't, especially an edge rusher, you just don't know how that's going to affect that burst, that explosiveness, that suddenness, their ability to change directions. It's another reason I'm shocked the Saints paid Marcus May what they paid him. So with Ajabo at 35 or 38, I can't love it, especially since he was a guy who was raw, who is going to need time to develop. He's going to take a year off football. I wouldn't like it at 35 or 38. But in the third round, I think you can maybe take that gamble if he's a player you like. All right, Michael, I think we've touched on everybody. I will be absolutely shocked if they take somebody at 4 or 10 that we haven't talked about. I mean, all this will be for waste. But we're on record now, Michael. This report card right here.
Yes.
I mean, this looks like my college transcript a little bit, but it is here. A lot of C's. But this is on record now. So no matter who they take, Michael, our opinion before the draft, before we've had time to rationalize, is out there. We'll see how much it changes depending on who they draft. But I'm
one thing I do notice is that our second round picks, like if this is what your transcript looks like, then you're in good shape. I see a lot of A's and B's on here. So I think we're going to be happy with what happens there.
The thing is because when you get to the second round, we listed it's more like it is still possible they could take a guy at 35 or 38. We don't have listed here. But all the guys we did list are guys we've heard of and have talked about. I think Cameron Thomas is the only guy that I haven't really looked into out of all the guys we've talked about. So it's like if they take a guy you've heard of at 35 or 38, you're probably going to be more likely to
that's
be
a good
fan
point.
of it. But yeah, I mean, my goal for 35 or 38 is just I'm hoping one guy like a Nakobe Dean or a Tyler Linderbaum or a Daxton Hill, just somebody exciting can fall to that spot. Dean or Linderbaum is clearly the leader of the pack there. But there's an area where neither of them make it, and then there's still good players in that range. And honestly, it's not just the 2 second round picks. It's the third, it's the 2 fourths, and the 2 fifths. I mean that range in this draft from the 3rd to the 5th round, it's incredibly deep because of the COVID year. A lot of guys went back. This is the year they're coming out. It's not really a top heavy draft, but those 4th round picks and those 2 5th round picks, those are valuable. So we don't have the time to go into all those guys, but I'm just so excited for the draft to be here. I just want to see who they take, and so then we can finally start looking into them and forming our opinions. And then the schedule gets released, and then before you know it, training camp's here and the preseason's here, and then we're doing this all over again for the Jets to lose week 1 in an embarrassing fashion, and us to be looking forward to the draft in 2023.
Yes, exactly.
That's how this works. All right, you can follow us at CYJ Pod on Twitter. You can follow Michael at Michael_Nania, myself at Ben W. Blessington. Go to JetsXFactor.com for the best place to go for Jets content. I think that's it, Michael. Any last thoughts before we get? I know we will do a mailbag. We put out some questions, or we put out a tweet. We got some questions back. We're compiling a big draft mailbag. We still have to do a mock draft. We really haven't come out with our exact player rankings, although this episode kind of accomplished that. So we still have some things to come out with before the draft. We're still finalizing our exact draft week plans, but we will have a lot of content next week, especially during and after the draft. Michael, any last thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I mean I'm really excited for the draft to finally. It's a good feeling when you finally figure out who that one guy is. That well, in this case, 2 first round picks and 2 second rounders. Um, but to finally know like who your guy is, because we have right now how many players we talk about today? Like at least 30, and only max 4 of them are going to be Jets. So once you finally figure out, it's like a satisfying feeling. Okay, these are our guys. This is who I got to learn about and familiarize myself with. And this is a guy who's going to be a big part of my life for the next few years. So it's fun.
All right. Well, there you have it. Yeah, we will be back probably later this week with the mailbag. But again, next week, big week for content. Everybody have a great week. Almost here, 9 days away. Then all this meaningless discussion can stop. Have a good one.